Namaskar, Shabba Khair. Welcome to the third episode of Pustakalya Wala Podcast. आज हम जारी रखेंगे जो हमने कल परसों इन्वेस्टिगेशन शुरू किया on the electromagnetic field theory of consciousness. Yesterday we discussed about John Joe McFadden's work, and we decided to set that aside in favor of Susan Pockett's work. So I downloaded her book and started reading the book. The introduction is done now, and I decided to just record this podcast because there are already some interesting ideas in in the introduction. The first thing she says is that it is a it is a new direction, first of all, in terms of the establishment, the scientific establishment. First of all, for a long time, research on consciousness was frowned upon. It was really frowned upon. Nobody was talking about it because there were no answers. It was all speculation, philosophy. Maybe I don't know exactly what was the deal, but people didn't take. If you said you're researching consciousness, people wouldn't take you seriously. But that changed in the last couple of decades, I would assume, because there is this Journal of Consciousness Studies that has come up, and a lot of papers have been published on it. And Susan Pockett's paper and Susan Pockett's book came out. This book came out in 1999, and she has later on in her life she has improved upon. So I'm going through the book. Seems interesting because the start point is actually Indian mythology, not just mythology, even just Indian text, the actual Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita. All those texts are referenced in order to talk about how our ancestors thought about consciousness. And the one thing that was salient for them, the one property of consciousness that was salient to them, was the unification of all the senses. So not really sure how she jumped from that to electromagnetic field, but she did. And she talked about this idea that electromagnetic field actually is already a big part of the study of the mind, the study of the brain, because we actually do calculate the wave pattern of the mind, of the brain. In this case, not the mind. I shouldn't say the mind. I shouldn't confuse them. Brain is the physical wetware, and mind is what brain does, basically. What we are living inside the mind. So you must have heard of alpha, beta, and gamma waves of the mind, and when you're sleeping, such and such waves are up and such waves are down. When you are attentive, this is happening. When you're meditating, theta waves are up. All those ideas are already an established part of the research on studies of brain and sleep and all those things. So there is a huge amount of data in this. There are a huge amount of data in this field. Data is apparently plural. I didn't know that for a long time. The word data is plural. I didn't know that. So first of all of the electromagnetic waves that are associated with the brain activity happens to fall between the 0 and 100 hertz. That is really, really low frequency. That's lower than radio waves. Right? So this is something that is not really used. Electromagnetic waves are the same thing, the light and the X-ray and gamma waves, and but 0 to 100 hertz is the creation of the mind. Not the creation. This is at which the mind, the mental electromagnetic waves are associated at. Then she talks about how this can be the answer to David Chalmers' questions put forth for consciousness. And those questions are also called the hard questions of consciousness. We've already discussed this, but to formalize it, these are the questions put forth by Chalmers. Why does why does conscious experience exist? If it arises from physical systems, as seems likely, how does it arise? Is consciousness itself physical, or is it merely a concomitant of physical systems? How widespread is consciousness? Do mice, for example, have conscious experience? Why is seeing red like this rather than like that? Why do we experience the reddish sensation that we do rather than some entirely different kind of sensation like the sound of a trumpet, let's say? Ultimately, one would like a theory of consciousness to do at least the following. It should give conditions under which physical processes give rise to a consciousness. And for these processes that give rise to consciousness, it should specify just what sort of experience is associated. Right. So Susan Pockett claims to answer or give a possible answer to these questions in the introduction, and I have yet to read the whole thing. Of course, I'm on chapter 1, the ground rules, right now, and this is a big book, so I'll take a few days to finish it. I think it has 120 pages. I'm on 12 pages. I'm already 10% done, so maybe it should take no less than 10 days or no more than 10 days, I should say. But this problem is really interesting because Susan Pockett actually comes directly from the area of interest that I come from. Consciousness is the only, this is just me talking about my interest in this question. Consciousness is the one thing where how you feel, what you feel, the first person experience actually matters as evidence, right? The cash value of evidence lies in the first person subjective experience. So, research in psychology usually kind of is frowned upon at first person reports being used as evidence because it comes a little lower than other forms of evidence, which can be empirically judged through different instruments. But in psychology, kind of is first person reports are usually not considered very good. But consciousness is a subject that, like, if you are saying to a person sitting in front of you that your brain signals report that you must be feeling pain. Are you feeling pain? And the person says, no, not at all. I'm not feeling pain at all. The data that the data point that you throw away is the first one, not the second one. If you are trying to understand pain, you cannot throw away the fact that he's not feeling pain, right? So this is one thing that is very interesting. And when you look through the first person experiences that we have had in Indian society, especially 2500 years ago when Buddha established his philosophy and the Vipassana meditation, and that is of the most interest to me. So in a way, I come from that point of view. I am interested in consciousness from the first person first. Initially, I got interested as a first person observer, and then I came up with this idea of possibilities in what ways it can be electromagnetic field. And this is exactly not exactly, but this is kind of the way in which Susan Pockett is doing. So I'm kind of interested in reading this book and following it to completion in the next few episodes. So if I'm already done with 10 minutes, so I'll stop here. And this format is actually pretty interesting. 10 minutes is small enough time that I keep focus, and I think I'll continue this is just painless and really informative, and I'm learning a lot of things just by speaking. A lot of things just come into my mind, so I'll keep it shorter than 12 minutes. See you tomorrow, or if you're watching it in future, see you in the next video.